For the next 24 hours in Destiny 2, I want you to do nothing else, not a single other thing, than to do Pinnacle Ops and farm out Kells Falls. Kells Falls is one of those pinnacle missions you've already seen people talk about. I've talked about it on my channel multiple times regarding one of the better ways of farming loot and upgrades and all that stuff. There's also Starcross. There's the infamous at this point Encore. All those activities are in Pinnacle Ops, but today, for this reset on Monday, the 28th of July, until reset on Tuesday, you have the ability to farm every single run Mint Retrograde, which is the new rocket assisted frame pulse rifle, which is, in my opinion, one of the best new weapons in the game that you need to farm out. Depending on how your light level is as well, you can farm up to the tier 2s, tier 3s, tier 4s, and probably even tier 5s. But regardless of where you are in your light level grind, you need to take today off. Call off of work, tell the wife and kids, get away from me, because it's time to sit in this activity and farm until you get every single roll probable that you need to have. Now, why is this weapon so good and why is it so sought after? Because it is a rocket assisted frame, it's a pulse rifle, but because of the way it operates, it is incredibly strong in all activities. Now, I personally use this pulse rifle in my contest Desert Perpetual, and it allowed me to do incredibly strong damage against all targets and even some okay supplemental damage when I was out of all of my other weapons for DPS. But the main reason you want to use it is for ad clear and to have something like range to just defeat targets very, very quickly. And this is easily one of the best primary weapons. I guess you can call it a primary weapon, even though it is a special weapon. This is one of the best weapons you need to farm right now. Now, I'm not going to go into details regarding, what the best loadouts are for this farm, because you could really just pull up Fire Team Finder, pull 2 people in, and just run it with no min-maxing and optimizing, and you're going to still get a lot of drops as you play. Now, I would recommend putting on Lord of Wolves, as no matter the light level of this activity, Lord of Wolves will shred through all of the content. Currently, I'm doing this on Expert. I just got back from GCX, so I am a bit behind on the grind personally, but I do believe Expert is a perfectly fine starting point. You could also go into Mastery if you have enough people, enough friends, high enough light to pull you there. Now, all of my information is on Expert, but once I get to Master today, more than likely, I will revamp this video, or at least put a little comment in the comment section regarding what I think you need to put on. Weapon doesn't have a very large perk pool, which means you'll be able to get the perks that you really want fairly fast, especially if you're farming tier 4s and tier 5s. What I would personally recommend in the first column is perks like beacon rounds, which is really good for range attacks. The homing targets just go towards the enemies a little bit easier. That's really nice. Personally, I would suggest going for rewind rounds. This weapon is a special weapon, and because of it being a special weapon, even though it is a pulse rifle, it does lean on the smaller size of ammo, and a lot of people, from what I've talked to, don't use this weapon as much because of the small magazine and because of the small ammo reserves. This gun is already incredibly strong, so all we need to do is put on things that will allow us to make this weapon a primary weapon, especially if you're someone like myself who prefers to use double specials. Rewind rounds can solve that issue personally, because you shoot it a couple times, rewind rounds procs, gives you more ammo. If you don't want to for some reason go with this, you could also go with Envious Arsenal. The reason I wouldn't go for Envious Arsenal though is because in order for it to reload the weapon, obviously it's got to go through all the other weapons first before you can go back to this weapon. This is probably not the way I would personally want to use the weapon unless I'm doing a damage rotation or something specific. So this is a second tier perk if you already have the other 2 perks already available, which in my opinion, it has to be rewind rounds and or beacon rounds. If you get one of those 3 perk columns, the 3 perks I would obviously go for are rewind rounds and then Envious Arsenal. That's what you want to go for the 3rd perks. Last perk columns, a lot of people are going to look for stuff like bait and switch, which isn't terrible, but there are just significantly better, more optimal perks to go for in this column. The first one I would highly recommend going for is Master of Arms. I know a lot of people, write off Master of Arms, but it is a very solid damage increase to this weapon, and it gives you the damage increase even if you have to stow the weapon away and then pull it out later. So like if you get a kill with your heavy weapon, if you get a kill with your secondary weapon, that's going to still trigger Master of Arms. So when you get back to using this weapon, it still has that lethality already. One for All is another really good choice, but I do think One for All isn't as good. Even though the damage increase is higher, it's not that noticeable because the base damage of this weapon on top of Master of Arms is already doing more than enough damage in most content. One for All also requires you to shoot 3 separate enemies to trigger, even One for All to proc. So you might not have situations where you can get that One for All proc when you really need it. I just personally found in my place time that Master of Arms was just a better choice than One for All, but your mileage may vary. Another thing that people really like to look at right now is Slice on this weapon, and I haven't personally tested Slice out. Even though Slice is something I normally really go for, on this weapon I just think it's surrounded by a lot of better perks that Slice just might not be as worth it. Another perk that I personally think you should look at is Elemental Honing. Elemental Honing is just going to be another damage increase like Master of Arms, like One for All, except the more abilities that are different, the better your damage is going to be. This is a strand weapon. A lot of us right now are using Stasis. We're all using Arc with like T-Crash and stuff. We're all using Solar. So if you're one of those players that are using like a few abilities of Void, a few abilities of Arc, Strand, Stasis, you might benefit more from Elemental Honing, especially like its damage increase is incredibly high on this kind of weapon at about 30-35%. So if you are doing a lot of different elemental mixing, Elemental Honing is probably your best choice. Although if you are like running a full like say Strand build or like a full Solar build, like if you're a Starfire Protocol build or something like that, you're not going to see the benefits. So if I had to pick, and my personal choices would absolutely be Master of Arms 1, Elemental Honing 2. But those are kind of like a 1A, 1B situation that can be interchangeable depending on what your playstyle could be and will be. But if you can get one of those tier 4s, tier 5s, just like I said before, then you definitely want to get Elemental Honing and Master of Arms on this weapon. That bottom tier, I personally think could be Slice, could be Chain Reaction. This is probably the one time I would say Slice isn't as beneficial to have, but at the same time, Slice is one of the best perks in the game, especially for higher tier content. So if you aren't really struggling with damage, or you can, make up that damage elsewhere, then Slice is a fairly good perk to have. I can't really speak highly about bait and switch on this weapon just because of the playstyle I would personally be using it with, and I don't really see much use with chain reaction on this weapon, but I haven't had one drop with that perk yet, so I haven't had a chance to test it out. Those are my thoughts on this weapon. I literally think this is one of the best weapons in the game that are legendary currently. Obviously, rocket assisted weapons are just the wave, the meta. They have been for a while, and I know a lot of people didn't think much of this post, but I stand by this post and I tell everyone I know that they should farm this post, and I'm going to be farming this post until reset. I'll be live all evening. My voice is still shot from GCX, but that's not going to stop the grind. I'm going to be in there myself as well. I think a lot of people probably are going to ask is what do you need to put on your customization thing to make this as efficient as possible, and honestly, put whatever you feel comfortable putting on there to get to that B+ score. I personally put on a bunch of stuff to get myself to an A+, an A score, and it was about 12 to 15 minutes, but that was with Fireteam Finder and me throwing. I literally got off the plane, sat down, and tried testing this stuff out. So once you get with your team, you and your team can just put on whatever you feel comfortable to get to that B+ score. Put on Lord of Wolves and just, sit in there for the next 20 plus hours now. As always, I do appreciate you watching the video, and it really means a lot to me, for real. And until the next one, I will see you in the next video.